Welcome to the Winners Win podcast, where we highlight awesome people in Kansas City and their secrets to success. I'm your host, Jaime Simpson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Net Standard. At Net Standard, we manage technology so you can manage your business. Today, my guest is Sheila Seck, Managing Partner of Seck and Associates. Hi, Sheila. Thanks for being with me.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here this morning.
Before we get started, I'm gonna mix things up a little bit. I like to ask people, since we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about your many successes. I like to start by asking people about a memorable loss or your first loss. And some people talk about Little League, and some people talk about business. You can talk about whatever comes to mind. But what is a time when you did not win that sticks out in your head?
When we did not win, I would say it is when we have had really big growth at the firm, and you're trying to scale up and hire more attorneys, and sometimes that feels uncomfortable, and our clients have felt that. So we've maybe lost a client, and that I take so personally. But during that growth stage, where maybe we had a little bump in the road, and I always tell my attorneys, like, with clients, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's probably not a huge thing that causes them to leave, but just all the little things when we aren't on our top game, maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So not a big loss, but something that I think we think about it all the time. And when it does happen, it feels a little bit personal.
Yeah, I think most business owners take those kind of things personally, right? Because it's your baby and their clients that you work hard to get clients.
Right.
And you certainly want
and you want them to be happy.
Sure.
And you want them to feel like they're getting value for what they're paying, for these expensive legal services. So.
Well, and we were talking a little earlier about, how you treat people and how important it is. And I think that's one of the things that I think is really hard for me is when someone walks away and I know they feel like they haven't been treated the way I want them to feel, right? I mean, regardless of whether we do business together or we don't do business together in that setting, I still want people to feel like I respect them and I value them. And even if it's not the right time for us to work together for whatever reason, then that we can walk away and go, okay, well, we all feel good about each other here. Right. And that just doesn't always happen. And I agree that that's
And often, I think sometimes communication really can smooth those things over when it does happen, kind of owning up to it or saying, I'd love your feedback, how we can do better next time.
I think people really like to be asked. I think you're right. I think sometimes just the elephant in the room and getting it out there is the way, but I'm also an extremely direct communicator, which I don't know if you know that about me yet, but you'll figure it out fast. I don't beat around the bush a lot.
But I think successful people are. I mean, I think being passive aggressive or being paralyzed about having those difficult discussions can be hard for your business.
Yeah.
I think communication is the key.
Well, I think that's a great segue because you are clearly an expert communicator. So back up for me again and tell me a little bit about sort of who you are and your firm and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I am founder of a law firm, Seck and Associates, which only does business law. So we do everything from startup through helping clients grow through capital raises, all kinds of things, and then help them when they're ready to sell, representing them all the way to the end of their business. So it's really the full life cycle. So we see everything that happens, good and bad, and it's really rewarding. I always say I have the happy practice of law because there's a lot of win-wins compared to litigation. So it just feels good a lot of the time.
So how did you get started? I looked online, I mentioned this a minute ago, that you actually have your undergraduate degree in engineering. So how did you end up in law?
Right. Well, because I really just didn't love being an engineer. I hate to say that, but I wanted something that was much more client-facing, much more so it had the same things: problem solving, being organized, having to, have some ability to solve problems with clients, but in a much more social way, I would say, because my high extrovert needed that.
Yeah. The extroverts are probably hard to come by at Rolla. I'm guessing. Not a lot of extroverts.
Yeah.
At least when I was familiar with it, it may have changed.
Yeah. So, not that, there are engineering jobs where you're in sales or, have that. But for me, it just wasn't like I love the work, but it has served me so well because I think all the things that you learn in engineering are so applicable to solve problem solving for clients. So it's just been such a blessing for me to have become a lawyer and made that change.
Well, I think one of the things that's so interesting about your practice is your focus on entrepreneurs and sort of business law and transactional law. And so how did you first get involved with that? And then what made you start your own practice?
Yeah, so I thought, what do I like about being an engineer? And I saw that law was a way that I could do something that I liked, sort of that would be fit for my personality. So, but that didn't mean litigation. From the first day, I knew I was going to be a transactional attorney. And I started out at a large firm, Bryan Cave in Kansas City, where I had great training. They're fabulous, so many wonderful people there. But it was, very hard to have a work-life balance. I had two small kids, and I got hired away by Honeywell to go in-house. And that probably just didn't give me the kind of autonomy or working with different clients that I liked. It was a great experience, but I didn't like having one client. I missed having a lot of clients.
Yeah.
Seeing a lot of things that were going on in Kansas City. So the next thing was to sort of, launch my own practice. So and I've never looked back. It's been great.
What challenges did you have when you did that?
I feel like more like when I did it and I just kind of had some clients and started that was the easy part. I mean, I always felt like very confident I can do that. I think the harder part often is just growing your firm and sort of how I see it is like things can be the status quo, they're going great, and then you grow and you bring on more people and you need more processes and then you kind of get to another status quo and it's working and then you grow and you hire more people and you need to change some processes. So it's sort of those growth periods that are the hardest, and I think a lot of it's the people portion, which based on all my clients that's probably pretty common, that the people part is hard sometimes, or it can be.
Yeah, I actually just got done talking to my friend Shane about cybersecurity, and we had a whole conversation about how people is hard in a technical sense too, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think we're all the anomalies, right? Everybody, sort of not everyone processes things the same way, and that dealing with those things is, I'm sure, a big part of what you do.
Right. And so we have a very sophisticated practice. So, we're competing with big firms for talent, and that's sometimes hard. But we do have a great team, but I think, so those are the challenges. But I mean, I think it's still mostly every day I wake up and I'm still pretty excited, even after all these years, to be able, I feel honored to work with these startups who it's their whole life. So what we can bring is very valuable to them.
Oh, I'm sure. So do most companies reach out to you because they're looking to do a transaction, or are they sort of building their legal base of business as a startup? I mean, how do you engage typically with those kind of clients?
Yeah, so I've just had a long talk with a tech startup today. So his technologies, he's ready to launch. He's going to a trade show. So he's had all these people kind of work for free for him. So he's like, I need to give them equity. We talked about how that would work, tax implications. He had some other things, they needed to have some software development agreement. So he's trying to put it all together now that he's ready to launch, even though his company was formed like a year ago. So we get involved when, these entrepreneurs are getting to each level. Like, are they ready to raise capital? Are they ready to give their employees equity? Yeah. Are they ready to buy out a partner who is not in alignment with them, which happens all the time.
All the time.
So, it seems really great when you're sitting around the table like, let's start this awesome tech company. And then somebody just thinks this is not for them. So that's very common, whether it's in the first year or in year 5.
Yeah. Well, that's such an interesting, I assume it presents some really interesting legal challenges. Do you have a favorite part of the process? Like, is there a stage of evolution that you find more interesting, or?
Yeah, kind of when they get sophisticated enough where they're raising capital with sophisticated investors, private equity firms, because those deals are fun. But really the part I like the very best is the mergers and acquisitions. So where somebody is getting an offer and we're evaluating that, or we're helping them put together a sell side where we're like, what would you like? Like, if you were able to sell your company today, what would that look like? Would you want to continue working? Would you be willing to roll over and buy some equity in the new company? So all those things to get a business owner what they want and, take the success of what they've grown.
Okay, I have a question that you might not be able to answer. I think you can, but we'll see. And if you can't, then that's fine. But what is the weirdest thing that somebody has asked for in an M&A transaction? There's got to be some really strange
No,
stuff.
it's more like they'll say, if I die, I don't want my wife to get to vote. If we die, we want our wives to have non-voting equity. I go, oh, really?
Do they know that?
Yeah. I go, that's a terrible idea. So, for example, I grew up in St. Louis. I said, what if you were an early investor in Anheuser-Busch and you were one of the founders? But you die and you own a 30% and it's this huge company, but your wife can't vote on anything. Your shares are locked up in non-voting. I'm like, if you get bigger, that it's so nonsensical. Plus, isn't your wife smart too? Come on. It seems there's a little bit of sexism in that request.
In the spirit of trying to take the best possible view of that, I mean, I can see where my grandfather owned a business, and when he died, I could see him doing that. Now, they were a very different generation, right? But I could see him doing that because he didn't want her to feel pressured to make decisions, which is sexist too, right?
Right.
But I could see it falling under the guise more protectorism than I don't
Exactly.
think I'm smart enough
And
to
that
make
is
these
true.
decisions. Yeah.
So early on, when I'm first meeting with people in this, we talk about that. I say, if you don't want your wives on the very first meeting to run this company, then we need to put something in place like insurance or a right for the company to buy your wife out. So she gets liquidity. She doesn't have to work in the business. And it could be a husband too.
Sure,
but I'm
right.
like, if you don't want, if you're,
I assume it could be
if you're-
children too
yeah.
that don't want to work in the business.
Yeah, if you don't think your family members want this, let's just figure out a way and we'll structure it in your documents how you get bought out if you die. Your family gets that liquidity. So there is a way to gently get around those kinds of concerns. And you're right. I think generally it comes from, my wife doesn't want to do this. My spouse doesn't want to run this company. Won't know how to run it. It will feel terrible should I die.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm sure the opposite is true sometimes too. But yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting perspective. I mean, I guess I don't typically think about that side of some of the. I guess I knew somebody who was building a business and they wanted it to stay in a very specific part of town. Right, they were not willing to move it, but it was like, well, I want to sell it, but I want to make sure that it stays right.
Right.
And I remember being like, I don't think that's how it's going to work. I don't know that you can do that. And so I can see that owners might have a vision for, and I've seen firsthand owners having a vision. And I think you mentioned it actually on your profile on your website. You talked about the difference between founders and stakeholders and sort of their, negotiating those priorities. Right.
Because I think one thing that sellers struggle with is, for example, they are like, I don't want them to ever be able to fire my employees or move my headquarters. Like you said, kind of the same thing. And, I have to gently say, when you don't own the bus, you don't really get to drive the bus anymore. And, while it is probably their intention, and we can ask them if they want to keep your employees, but if things are going poorly or if it's a bad fit, they are going to have every right to terminate those employees. And I think that's sometimes hard for sellers to let go of that control or just their concern about their employees.
Yeah.
That's a request I hear a lot from, family-owned businesses.
Do you find that people that are serial entrepreneurs or build a lot of businesses are able to detach a little bit easier?
Yes.
Right? I would think that would be true.
Yes.
Versus this is my very first baby.
And I've run it for 20 years and these people are like my family. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet that's true.
Yeah. If you're a serial entrepreneur, I think you're much more probably detached and a little bit more objective about it.
Sheila, you mentioned something that caught my attention, and because I can tell you're really passionate about your entrepreneurs and the businesses that you work with, but then you're running your own business. So how do you split your time between client work and running your business? And has that been a transition that was difficult for you?
Yes. My gosh, that's so insightful because that is something I'm working on a lot right now. We can only grow if I delegate more client work. And, the part I also love is bringing on new clients,
Yeah.
doing the rainmaking part. So, we are just building our team, and it is hard to let go, but because you have this feeling that no one can do it as good as me. No one can draft this document as good as Sheila Seck.
And my name's going to be on it,
Exactly.
so I care. Right.
So, but then you have to, I am really good at delegating the admin stuff. But the legal part, but we've made a huge transition this year, which is allowing us to grow. We brought on some really good attorneys. But that is right. It's like a balance. So my goal in 2023 is to spend more time on strategy, on developing, how we're going to grow versus just drafting a contract.
So Sheila, you mentioned your 2023 goals, and we were talking about sort of stepping back from certain things and pushing into others. So what are you looking forward to doing in 23?
Yeah, so we have a goal to double our revenue, which
that's
is
a huge
big
goal.
goal.
Yeah.
Which requires us to do a lot of things efficiently, grow our team, me delegate more. So provide with a focus on customer service. How do we make customers feel really good about the service that they're getting from us, and not just the legal work, but like, are they getting enough attention and all those kinds of things. So it's revenue growth, but also with a focus on like, how do we improve our customer relationships.
So are there roles you're adding to the team to help address some of those things? Because it seems like it could be counterintuitive, right? You're growing your business, but you want everybody to still have that same customer experience. So is it mostly lawyers you're adding, or are there other roles you're adding to the business?
Yeah, so mostly lawyers, but we've added some customer service, just making sure that we're following up. We are reaching out to them on a regular basis. We are, adding a customer satisfaction kind of program. Just ways to make sure that the communication is going on a regular basis and we're not dropping the ball, so people feel like, my lawyer's not paying attention to me. Which when you're growing really fast and you're doing a lot of deals and you're prioritizing your work on a daily basis, sometimes things, get dropped if you're not really paying attention to those details.
Yeah. So what does that mean for you and your role then as you scale and you look at what the business is going to look like at double the size? How does that change your day-to-day?
I think less practicing, less document drafting, more we have to improve our processes. We have to make things more consistent. Everybody has to understand what those processes are. So more training for our team. When you have one or two attorneys, you can do it very ad hoc. You take this deal, I'll take this deal, and it'll all be fine. As we get more clients and people just need training and to understand like what our culture and how we're going to operate. So I think it's training and communication within our team.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, training is hard to do. I mean, I think
Agreed.
We all talk about training, but it's hard to really be sort of codified, or I don't know the right word, but it's like, it's one thing to say, I'm going to sit down with you one-on-one and I can train you to do something. It's another thing to like, okay, how do I build this process so that we don't just train one person to do it this way, we train everybody to do it this way. And that's a different level of rigor and sort of detail.
Right.
Yeah.
Or compared to like a private, a personal injury firm, maybe they do car crashes. So they're taking calls from car crash people, and their process is very similar. But a poor young associate in our office could be working on a capital raise one day, a stock option agreement the next day, a sales purchase agreement. So I feel like everybody who comes, if they haven't done our practice, they're just there's no process that allows them to learn everything quickly. It's just years of learning your craft.
Yeah.
With the kind of work that we do, which is the good part about it. It's so interesting. Even as many years as I've practiced, I still love it.
Well, it's a notoriously, time-intensive art, right?
So like
craft.
You said, while we talk training, that's harder to implement than it sounds.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I bet that's true.
Because there's so much nuance and fact-based things. Because a purchase agreement, for example, will be, what does our client want? What are the risks in the business? What risks are we trying to minimize for them? Which would be different from a retail store compared to a senior living facility, or compared to a manufacturing company. So there's all these nuances that just sometimes take experience, and you can't teach it just as part of a training program necessarily.
Well, and I would think you're dealing with different jurisdictions too, right?
Right.
Is that, I assume that adds some complexity to it as well.
Mm-hmm. And just everybody's goals are different, and so there's a lot to juggle and to think about all the time.
Well, I think it's really I think your firm and I think what you've built your business around is just so fascinating. Like I just love that side of what you do, and hearing about the legal side of some of those transactions I find really awesome. So I love hearing about it. But I know you do a lot of civic community service too, and you have a life outside of your firm and all of the great things that you've built. So what do you do with your time where you're not building your firm?
Yeah, so one thing I love to do is travel, and so COVID actually, changed that for a lot of employees and business owners. So I travel quite a bit, and we are partially remote and in the office, so I've been able to squeeze in trips where I work part of the day, and then I went to France and Spain this year, and Mexico and Florida a couple times. So I feel like I'm getting to do all this travel and work, so it's pretty seamless for clients. I'm on a couple not-for-profit boards, and that is very rewarding. And I play pickleball and golf.
You do?
Are you a pickleball
Do you play
player?
with Patrick Mahomes? Because doesn't he now own a pickleball franchise?
No, I don't. But he has the first, a professional franchise.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
sure I could be good
Which
at
is
that.
crazy,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
No, so I have a good friend that during COVID, that was one of the things she picked up, and so I have played pickleball a couple of times, and it's really fun.
It is fun.
So do you play on a league? Like you play?
I just play kind of a informal league with some other business women on Sunday mornings, which is
that's super
fun.
It's
fun.
Yeah, what a great
good.
idea.
Yeah, so I think all of us, but unlike you who still have kids to manage, which is the full, going to games and theater and all those things where my kids don't live in Kansas City, and so it gives me a lot of time to pick up a lot of fun things like golf and pickleball and.
Well, I started golfing during COVID also, so I love to play.
Which we're going to have to go out.
We're going to have to go out. I'm very bad.
That's
I'm just
okay.
warning you. I'm better than I used to be, but I'm not very good.
We're all aspirational golfers.
But I love it. I find it so, I don't know. It's like, of course it's extremely frustrating, which anybody who golfs would tell you it's extremely frustrating, but I just love being outside, and it's relaxing. It's like just gives you some headspace, and I don't know, you can concentrate on it, you don't have to concentrate that much, and you can kind of drink while you do it, which
exactly.
is nice. And
exactly.
so, I love any sport where you can drink and play the sport at the same time. Yeah.
And so when I see young women who go I'm not going to learn to play golf, I'll just drive the cart. I always say,
don't be that girl.
I go, don't be that girl, because for me, not only do you play with other businessmen or can be invited to those things, but I found a community of women business women who golf, and I think that's been valuable for friendships, for business, to be part of that community. And so I would tell any young woman, take some golf lessons. I think one thing that we all think when we're beginning golfers, that everyone else is really good.
Yes.
And that's not true.
Yes.
So I think getting over that intimidation that everyone else is really, really good and you're going to be terrible, I think you just kind of have to push yourself to get over that.
Well, I think we should definitely play golf together.
Absolutely.
So that's something we definitely need to do. Now, do your boys play golf too?
They do. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
One
great.
of them is obsessed, and the other one will play with us. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I played last summer with a guy who was obsessed, and he was trying to play down to me. We decided to scramble the back nine, and I had just gotten to where I was really comfortable, right? And then they paired me, because they're trying to be fair, they paired me with the best golfer. And then
which is intimidating, right?
Which is so intimidating. But he's a great driver, and I thought, well, great, you'll drive, and then I'll do my thing later on. And then he spent the whole time totally chastising himself about how bad he was playing, which, by the way, he was like the guy, there used to be a Bud Light commercial where it was here's to the guy who hits it 400 yards every time, even though it always goes in the rough. That was that guy at that time. And I'm like, why are we doing this? And I had the worst experience. So we got to the end, I looked at my friend and I was like, I'm never playing with him again. I was like, I can't do it. It's because he'd be like, oh, it's not you, you're doing so good. And then he'd hit it 300 yards and be like, we'll use yours that went 75, but you're doing so great. Thanks so much. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so bad.
I know.
I'm just a little too competitive for it, I think, is my problem.
That's okay.
When I chill out, I'm fine. But if it was too much competition for me. My husband does not play. He really
sometimes
does
that's
not
worse.
like to play.
When your husband coaches you, that's
Yes, most of my friends whose husbands play are pretty miserable about it, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But it's such a fun game, but you can become obsessed.
It's fun. It's a fun day, and it's a fun, like, it's long. I mean, when I took my 16-year-old, because I agree, I think it's important for girls and boys to learn how to do some of those, what I call sort of social sports,
I agree.
because from a networking perspective, you do those things and you go to places, and it's good to be able to pick up some conversation and feel comfortable doing those things. But so I took her, and she's got through about 10, and or maybe 12. She's like, why do we play 18?
See, I feel like 12 is good.
12 is
18
perfect.
is a lot.
9 is not quite long enough.
Right.
But 18 is like, I could have been done a half hour ago.
That's funny that you say that, because I'm like, I feel like golf should have a 12 hole.
Perfect.
A 12
It would
hole
be
round.
Perfect. Yes, I totally
Because 9,
agree.
you're like a little bit like, I still wanted to play some more, but 18, you're like, I want to go have a cocktail. Or
Right,
something.
and I'm already out on the card, so I've got to go do
Exactly.
something else.
Exactly.
Yes, I totally agree. So, Sheila, thank you so much for being with me today. I like to end the conversation by asking you for a piece of advice. So, what's your piece of advice for whether it's a student or somebody who's interested in building a business, or I mean, what would be your great lesson that you've learned?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have a lot, but one thing that I have used the last couple of years, which has really helped my growth, is like, we all need coaches and mentors. And sometimes you might need a coach. We use a law firm coach.
How interesting.
Yeah, so we're in a law firm peer group, which has been super helpful. I have a coach for our team in Kansas City. We use EOS, so we have an EOS coach. I have a personal trainer. So I think all those things, like if we think we already know how to do everything, I think that really limits where we can go. But if we engage some really good coaches and mentors, I think it can really help us accelerate what we're doing.
I think that's really good advice, because I do think part of being a constant learner is being able to step back and go,
Right.
there's somebody out there that knows more about this than I do, and how do I figure that out faster, right?
Right. So I think that is something I've really found valuable the last couple of years. And of course, the other advice is just like, take that risk. Don't look back and be sorry that you didn't do something or start your own business or whatever it is. Don't live a life of regret.
That's great. That's great. It's probably, I'm sure there are as many people as you meet who are excellent risk takers. There's plenty of us that are maybe not quite so risk forward. Yeah. So
Mostly my people are all risk takers.
I was gonna say, yeah, they are.
Right.
The lawyers probably are not huge risk takers
No.
by nature, right? So you're
Right.
sort of the counterbalance for some of that, I'm sure.
I think I'm riskier than most lawyers, yeah. Have a higher risk tolerance, let's put it that way.
Well, I'm sure that's what makes you great at what you do.
Well, thanks for having me today.
Thanks for being here. It was
Yeah.
really fun catching up.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again soon
Definitely.
on the golf course.
Yes, with drinks.
Exactly.
Thanks.